Hello everybody, I'm Kieran. I scored 82 in the GAMSAT writing section and subsequently I'm starting medicine at Sydney Uni in 2023. Now, ACER tells us that the quality of our thinking is really important in determining what mark we get for our essays. So it's quite important that we spend some time thinking about thinking or idea generation. And to that end, today I'm going to put together some of my thoughts about how to generate high scoring ideas for your essays. So I'm going to go through the process I used in my essays to score 82. I'm going to go through an exercise that you can incorporate into your own practice routine. Then I'm going to give you a framework. I call it the DINC framework, D-I-N-C. It's 4 criteria that you can use to assess your own ideas and hopefully increase the sophistication of those. Then I'll put that all together in an example and wrap up with some frequently asked questions from my students. All right, let's jump into it. Now, it might seem a little bit counterintuitive, but idea generation often begins with comprehension. Ideas often come from other ideas. And the quote in the GAMSAT can often serve as a stimulus for your own thinking, and it also sets the parameters for that thinking. The reason for this is that there's this dialectical nature of human cognition, and it's kind of like this internal intellectual tennis match that's going on, where someone hits you a serve and you have to interpret what they've hit you, and then that serves as a stimulus for you to play a shot back. And if you do the whole process well, including interpreting what they've played to you, then you're more likely to play something back well in response. Oh yes, thank you. Once the other side is in clear focus, now it's time to interrogate your own beliefs or opinions on the topic. So this could be things like what you believe the sentiments in the quote are, whether or not you believe it contributes to a better or worse society, if you think there are any competing narratives or arguments that you could propose, and any relative knowledge or experience that you have on the topic. There's a fair chance that you'll come up to some kind of roadblock or writer's block, or your mind will just go blank, because some of these quotes can be quite unusual. Sometimes it might feel like you've never thought about them before, so it's good to have some strategies in place. A couple of things that I would do is I would try and make the situation as concrete as I could. So I would imagine that I was sitting at coffee with a friend that I'm really comfortable with, and they said something along the lines of the quote, and I just think, how would I respond to them if they said that, just to get some ideas flowing. Or I have a couple of people in mind whose, I guess, like intellectual status or their opinions there on most topics I often respect, and I would try and put myself in their mind or in their shoes and think, what might they say in response to this quote? So they could be a couple of like troubleshooting options that you could use. Now, it's all very well and good coming up with ideas, but how do we know whether or not our ideas are any good? Well, unfortunately, ACER doesn't tell us this. Damn it, ACER. So we're going to have to work it out ourselves, or work it out amongst ourselves. And this is something I gave a lot of thought to in my preparation. How do I know whether or not my ideas are actually going to lead to a high score? And I came up with some criteria of my own. And I've turned into a bit of an acronym, DINC, D-I-N-C. It's not the DINC, the double income, no kids or no children acronym. That's not really what this channel is about. It's about getting high marks in the GAMSAT. But so the DINC acronym, D stands for debatable, I for interesting, N for novel, and C for consequential. Now, debatable. This is a pretty important and often overlooked criterion. It basically says that your ideas or your thesis, kind of similar but different thing, they should be somewhat contestable. It certainly shouldn't be objectively true, otherwise it would be very uninteresting, but it shouldn't be so outrageously contentious that the marker is just going to disagree with you, because that could be a really risky ploy. Now, interesting, this is a somewhat ambiguous criterion, I suppose, but try to think to yourself, is this something that would get people to sit up straight at dinner or coffee? Would people be intrigued? Would they be curious about the idea that you're putting forward? So keep that in mind if you can as well. N for novel. Now this is quite a lofty criterion in a way, but it's basically saying try to avoid cliches, try to avoid ideas that you encounter in like everyday life, or that are like generally accepted truths. Try and push the envelope a little bit further than that. Maybe you might not quite get to a completely novel idea, but at least you could try and make it a little bit more unique, or not as commonly expressed. And then C, consequential. Does this idea actually have any tangible impact on people's lives? I suppose a comparison of the consequential versus non-consequential argument might be one relating to the economic structure of a country, communism versus capitalism. Obviously that has a very tangible impact on people's lives. And maybe a less consequential one might be, I don't know, theoretical physics and stuff like that. I'm really sorry if I just offended some theoretical physicists out there. I'm sure those ideas are extremely consequential, and that's cool if they are. You just need to demonstrate why they are consequential to people, and then you will have done a great job according to that criterion. This exercise is an extension of the quote interpretation exercise that I gave to you in a previous video. It's a 5-step exercise, and it's supposed to be really quick but high yield, so something that develops a really useful skill that's going to have a big impact on your writing on the day for the GAMSAT. And I tried to keep all my exercises that I did in my own preparation that I give to my students quite succinct but high impact, because we all are so busy. I was really busy preparing for the GAMSAT with work and other things going on. So hopefully, yeah, you should be able to do this within 5 to 10 minutes. It's 5 steps. First of all, we're going to interpret the quote. We're going to go through that 3-step exercise that I recommended in the previous video. So we're going to read each quote, then select one, and then interpret it deeply and paraphrase it. Okay, and then once we've done that, we're going to interrogate our own beliefs and opinions. We're going to come up with an opinion. You know, this can be quite an automatic response, especially if you've done that quote interpretation phase properly. Quite often it's yeah, you don't have to think too much beyond that. It would be quite natural. Then thirdly, you're going to come back with that DINC acronym and assess that idea that you've come up with in terms of whether it's debatable, interesting, novel, consequential. And then 4th step in this exercise, you're going to edit as you see fit. This is an important step, and you don't have to do it straight away. You can, I guess, just let your subconscious stew over it a little bit and come back to it later in the afternoon or the next day and then edit it. And yeah, that can really, I guess being able to assess yourself is really important. Is as you improve that skill, you do it quite automatically, and you'll hopefully on the day, if you come up with an idea that's not debatable or not very novel, then you'll pick it up straight away and be able to change it pretty much straight away. So we're practicing that skill there. And then 5th, this is somewhat unusual one, but I think a lot of people do this. I would always discuss the ideas that I come up with in my preparation. So in this exercise and in the essays that I wrote, I would discuss those ideas with friends and family members, and they were really good soundboards. Often I developed a lot of interesting ideas just by having conversations with people. The GAMSAT can be a pretty decent conversation starter. Yeah, and if you can pick a couple of friends and family members that are interested in talking about this stuff, then they might get a bit of enjoyment out as well. So everyone wins. Pink booklet now as an example of how to generate ideas in response to quotes. And first of all, quote interpretation is the first thing we have to do, acknowledging the dialectical nature of human thinking. So I've already had a look at these quotes in a previous video, so you can check that out if you like. And I've selected one, so I went through that 3-step process, quote interpretation. First of all, read all the quotes. Second, select one that you find interesting or thought-provoking. Third, interpret that quote with as much depth as you can. So I've done that here. I've read them all, I've selected one quote, this top one, and I've interpreted the quote, and you can pause and have a little read of that if you like. So the first quote that I'm going to, now that I've interpreted the quote, we're going to interrogate our own thoughts, feelings, opinions, all that stuff in response to it. And because I've had a really good read of it, I find it quite easy now to bounce back and say what I think. And the quote is, "It does not take much to reveal the primitive and animal side of human nature." Okay, so yeah, quite a cynical portrayal of human nature, I guess. My response to that is, human beings are fascinated with a cynical and malevolent interpretation of human nature. In fact,
Love and friendship is stronger than hatred. Okay, so this is just, an idea. To be honest, the first sentence is the crux of the idea, and I think that's the more interesting aspect of my response, and this is just also related. Okay, so now we've gone through, we've interpreted the quote, come up with an opinion in response to it, and we're going to now reflect on whether or not this quote appeases the 4 criteria, the DINC criteria. So is it debatable that human beings are fascinated with a cynical and malevolent interpretation of human nature? Well, I think the idea that we're fascinated with it is certainly up for debate. There's also definitely rosier interpretations of human nature, and I'm saying that we are somewhat deluded in being preoccupied with thinking that we are malevolent or evil. So it's certainly up for debate. Is it interesting? I find it interesting. I've actually had conversations with this before, with people about this before. So yeah, I would say so. Is it novel? Well, it's certainly not cliche. I don't think people are going around the street saying all the time, oh yeah, we're always worried about how evil we are, but actually we're not that bad. We're actually quite good. I don't really hear people saying things like that all the time. Is it consequential? Well, I would say so. I think considering the idea that we are bad fits within certain ways of seeing humanity. Growing up as a Catholic, I certainly think that it fits within that realm, and there can be issues come up with that Catholic guilt, that sort of thing. I think that's highly consequential. The way in which humans perceive themselves definitely determines how they feel about themselves. So I think in that regard, it's pretty consequential. And as I said, I've had conversations with people about this, and it would be an interesting conversation to have. So you can definitely pull it back to your friends and family and help them develop your ideas, and they might have some interesting things to say as well. Some of these GAMSAT topics can be good conversation starters. So that's the process in action there.
2 questions that I always get from my students is, how do I come up with original ideas, and can I talk about my own experiences in my essays? And I guess the first one's probably a bit more common, but they have a related answer. So how do I come up with original ideas? First of all, important to note that complete originality is extremely difficult, if not impossible, and all ideas come from other ideas. That's why it's really important to acknowledge the dialectical nature of human thinking. Usually we're inspired by something else into what we come up with in the present moment, and that is okay. That's what everyone does, even Shakespeare. And I think it was Paul Kelly, the Australian songwriter, said that good artists copy and great artists steal. Now, I'm not suggesting you should plagiarize other people's ideas or certainly not other people's essays. But you can rely on other people for inspiration and other ideas for inspiration. Relatedly, can you use experiences in your essays? Well, that can be a really good way to be original. So we're answering both questions here. So yes, you definitely can use your own experiences, and that can be a really good way to set yourself apart. It's very unlikely that anyone else, or impossible that anyone else sitting in the GAMSAT has had the same life experiences as you. And there's this really nice, singular, unique aspect to talking about things that have happened in your own life. It's really personal, can be quite endearing, can work really nicely. And I've seen a lot of people who maybe aren't the best writers, but who have had interesting things happen throughout their life, and they've been quite reflective, drawn insights from those things, and they've done quite well. So don't be afraid to do that for sure. So yeah, that's all I'm going through today. Good luck with the rest, good luck with the continuation of your study, and yeah, talk to you again soon. Cheers.